Manly Hall official, is glad to produce, publish and offer. Knowledge and Truth. July 1st, 1934. Dear friend, Aristotle opens his celebrated treatise Metaphysics with the statement, "All men naturally desire to know." The third and fourth branches of metaphysics are concerned with the substance and nature of knowledge and the relationship between things known and that abstract state of knowing which we term truth. In his famous work The New Atlantis, Sir Francis Bacon describes a philosophic empire ruled over by enlightened men, which is someday to be established upon the earth. In the midst of this empire is the City of Wisdom, and in the midst of this city, a university of the arts and sciences named Solomon's House. The master of this house describes the true purpose of knowledge. The end of our foundation is the knowledge of causes and the secret motions of things, and the enlarging of the bounds of human empire, to the effecting of all things possible. Lord Bacon was the father of modern science, and his definition of knowledge reveals a clear perception of spiritual values. He tells us that the end of all science is the knowledge of causes, that we may perceive not only things themselves but the reasons for them. Our quest for reasons must inevitably lead us to philosophy, especially that branch which we call metaphysics. The causes and reasons behind all natural phenomena exist in the invisible and subjective part of nature, the divine part. It is here that we must search for them if we are to become truly wise. Knowledge enlarges the bounds of human empire because it is an occult maxim that man's own nature extends to the circumference of his understanding. As we grow in knowledge, we truly enlarge ourselves, becoming, in fact, part of everything that we know. We flow outward along the radiations of our appreciation until, at last, according to the old mysteries, we know everything and become a part of everything. Lord Bacon describes the reward which knowledge bestows by his statement that through the enlargement of it, we are finally able to accomplish all things that are possible. By possible, he means consistent with the laws of being. Among possible things must be included the final perfection of man himself and the releasing through his organism of all the spiritual, intellectual, and physical powers latent within him. If you're enjoying this video and finding value in the content, we kindly ask you to take a moment to subscribe to the channel. A large portion of our listeners and viewers haven't subscribed yet, and by doing so, you'll help us grow and continue bringing you more high-quality audiobooks. Your support means a lot to us, and it's just one click away. So, go ahead and hit that subscribe button to stay connected and never miss out on our latest releases. The word knowledge has several meanings, measured by the understanding of the individual who uses it. The word knowledge may either infer a broad spiritual perception or signify little more than accumulated prejudices. For the sake of definition, we may say that knowledge may be either formal or relative. Formal or absolute knowledge exists only in the divine nature itself and is alone discoverable by the inner perceptions of an enlightened soul. This is because the soul itself, being part of the divine nature, partakes subjectively of divine knowledge. Relative knowledge is based on tradition, observation, and experimentation and is concerned chiefly with the elements and conditions of the temporal state. All so-called scientific knowledge, under our present system of education, must be relative. All knowledge derived from books must be relative, for relative knowledge comes from without, absolute knowledge from within. We must now distinguish between knowledge and truth, for, since the confusion of tongues, words have lost caste. Truth is an inclusive term, while knowledge suggests a fragmentary condition. Thus, we say, there are many forms of knowledge, such as the 7 liberal arts and sciences, but, philosophically speaking, we can never say there are many forms of truth, for truth infers a fundamental, unchanging, unconditioned reality, the fact per se. One of the old philosophers has said that truth is a divine light, invisible to mortal eyes but all-penetrating. Matter is a prism. The light of truth, striking this prism, breaks into a spectrum of intellectual colors. These colors, considered separately, are the departments of knowledge. Thus, knowledge is truth conditioned and broken up, but all real knowledge contains within it some element of truth. Some part of the whole is in all of the parts, even as some part of God is in every part of nature. Man is capable of containing knowledge or accumulating it, storing up in himself facts out of experience. But no man is capable of containing truth in himself, of collecting it or storing it up. To create a definition, the individual absorbs knowledge, but truth absorbs the individual. The alchemists called truth mercury because it was a common solvent that bound all things together. It recognizes no boundaries or divisions but penetrates all existence so universally that it can never be captured or limited by any organism. The rational principle in man ascends by a 7-runged ladder from the darkness of its material condition to the luminance of its spiritual state. Speaking in terms of knowledge, the 7 rungs of this ladder represent 7 sequential steps in the apprehension of fact. The lowest step is perception, which is possessed by even the most primitive types who abide in the unquestioned acceptance of things seen. From perception, the intellect rises to examination, from examination to reflection. What we call education today is merely the racial inheritance of things seen, examined, and reflected upon. From reflection, the reasoning part, commonly termed the mind, rises to knowledge, which is a synthesis of the 3 former processes. From knowledge, it rises to understanding, from understanding to wisdom, and from wisdom, it ascends finally to truth. Knowledge, being the 4th step in the unfoldment of reason, occupies a middle distance between the 3 inferior and the 3 superior parts. It was therefore regarded by the ancient philosophers as symbolical of the sun, which, in the old geocentric systems of astrology, moved upon the 4th orbit of the world, dividing the planetary family into 3 inferior and 3 superior bodies. According to the same doctrine, knowledge was peculiarly associated with man in that the human creation occupied the 4th round of the creative process. Thus, knowledge, like man, occupies a neutral position between the inferior and superior worlds. Below knowledge lies instinct and the physical perceptions. Above knowledge rises intuition and the spiritual perceptions. Thus, knowledge unites the 2 worlds, the divine and the animal. Conversely, knowledge also divides them. Yours sincerely. 944 West 20th Street, Los Angeles, California. Historical Supplement. Periander, Prince of Corinth, came to be included among the 7 sophists because of his great power and the wide sphere of his influence. He associated himself with the wisest of the Greek thinkers and became a patron of learning, both philosophical and judicial. He was hereditary prince of the Corinthians and traced his ancestry from Hercules through an unbroken line of 22 generations. Plutarch declared that Periander became tyrant, or ruler, by an hereditary disease derived from his father. By disease, Plutarch intimated inherited power. Being a wise prince, however, Periander sought to purge himself of this disease by association with the learned and by cultivation of democratic relationships with his subjects. 2 of his most famous precepts were: 1. That a good mind in a human body was the greatest and the least. 2. That a wise man concealed his misfortunes that they might not gladden the hearts of his enemies. With advancing years, Periander developed an excessive melancholy, and at last ordered his own death in the 80th year of his age. He so cunningly devised the method of his decease that the time and place of his burial remained unknown, and the Corinthians erected for him a monument over an empty tomb. Of his wisdom, the following sentences have been preserved. 1. A democracy is better than a tyranny, absolute monarchy. 2. Pleasures are mortal, virtues are immortal. 3. In good fortune be moderate, in bad fortune be prudent. 4. So conduct yourself that during life you will be praised and in death beatified. 5. To your friends be the same in prosperity and adversity. 6. Use new diets but old laws. 7. A successful democracy must have in it something of aristocracy. 8. Love and not armies must guard the persons of the great. Cleobulus, tyrant of Lindus, was also lineally descended from Hercules and is described by Suidas as excelling in wisdom, outward beauty, and physical strength, all those of his time. He was learned in the philosophy of the Egyptians and prepared many precepts and doctrines for the consideration of rulers. He wrote considerably and composed verses to the number of 3,000. His daughter was a most powerful influence in his life, having received every benefit which education could bestow, a circumstance unusual in his day. Cleobulus died at over 70 years of age, and his memory was perpetuated by the grateful citizens of his state. His most famous precepts were: 1. Do good to your friend that he may be more your friend, and to your enemy that he may become your friend, for we should beware of the calumny of friends and of the treachery of enemies. 2. Marry only those who are of equal social position, for by matching into a higher family one procures masters, not kinsmen. 3. Educate your daughters as you do your sons. 4. Devote your life to something which is excellent. 5. If a leader of a state is to be happy, he must trust none that are about him. 6. Moderation is the greatest virtue. 7. Rich, be not exalted; poor, be not dejected. 8. Learn to bear unmoved the vicissitudes of fortune. 9. 'Tis better to love to listen than it is to love to speak. 10. Take care of the body and of the soul. 11. Listen willingly but believe not all you hear. 12. When you go forth, consider what you have to do; when you return, consider what you have done. 13. It is better to know a few things than to be ignorant of all things. Solon, Archon of Athens, was one of the noblest and wisest of the Greeks. He earned for himself the title of the eloquent, for in discourse, rhetoric, and poetry he was without a peer. Solon was initiated into the mysteries of the Egyptians, and was the great lawmaker of the Athenians. Of law, Solon wrote, "Laws are like cobwebs which entangle the weak but through which the greater break uninjured." Being asked what constituted a well-ordered city, he answered, "That in which the citizens obey the magistrates and the magistrates obey the laws." Solon declared that there was but one thing that man had to fear, namely that he would die before he became a philosopher. Solon shared the philosophic extension of life, for he died at over 100 years, ordering his friends to carry his bones to Salamis, the city of his birth, there burn them and cause them to be scattered over the country. Solon loved knowledge to the end, and on the day of his death lifted his weary head to catch the words of some discoursing friends. Being asked why he did this, he answered, "That I may learn even while I am departing from this life." Herewith are a few fragments from the wisdom of Solon. 1. If all men should bring their misfortunes together in one place, each one would carry his own home again rather than take an equal share from the common stock. 2. The happiness of the outward life arises from honest action and temperate living. 3. To one who complained of the weight and number of his troubles, Solon said, "Come into this tower and view the buildings below and ponder upon the number of sorrows that heretofore, now, and henceforth shall dwell together under these roofs, and speak not of misery as though you bore them all." 4. Make reason the guide of every action. 5. Reason concerning hidden things from those things which are apparent. Solon studied philosophy with Xenophus of Heliopolis and Sanchez of Sais, the most learned and venerated of the Egyptian priest-philosophers, by whom, according to Plato, he was taught the language of the Atlanteans. Copyright 2025 by Manly Hall Official. Thank you for listening. Please consider to subscribe, like, and share, to help the channel growth, new videos on a daily basis.